The following podcast is scheduled for 2 hosts and 1 guest, and is your Virtua Made event for the evening. My name is drawphildraw, and I'll be your host alongside my partner Yodr. This is Virtua Made, where we talk about creating anything and everything.
Let's keep this virtual. Let's keep it virtual. Let's keep this virtual. Let's keep it virtual. Let's keep this virtual. Let's keep it virtual. Let's keep this virtual.
First, in the host corner, he is my co-host on the very podcast that you're listening to, an aspiring filmmaker and amateur artist, the Mahuboyo himself, Yodr!
What's up, buddy?
And drawing out of the red corner, he is a rising children's book illustrator who paints traditionally using watercolor, creating whimsical, appealing creatures and characters. He is Mr. JohnDrawing!
Hey, what's up, everyone?
Welcome to the podcast, man. I've been excited to do this for a really long time.
Yeah, man, I'm glad it finally worked out. This is super cool.
Oh yeah, we like we mentioned before, I've been trying to get you on for many weeks.
It's hard to gather people together.
Oh,
Yeah.
for sure. Especially this time of year, it's just absolutely insane with everything that's going on.
Oh yeah, it's graduation season.
Yeah, you're schoolboy.
Yeah, schoolboy.
And we'll definitely get to that later on in the show. I got some good questions to ask you about your experience and the show you did and stuff like that. I've been acquainted with your work for some time, but I haven't really found much time to sit down and actually chat with you and really pick your brain. So once again, thank you for coming on again and today and choosing to share some time with the Virtua Made crew.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, ditto to you. You know, it's been cool to follow what you guys do, and like I said off mic, that I love listening to your guys' podcasts. You know, like what and all that. You know, it's cool. It's cool background music to draw to.
Yeah, that's exactly what I imagine people how they receive it. Starting off, I'd like to ask some basic questions, mostly about how you got your start, your origin story, if you will. I'm going to ask you to dig into your memory banks and think back to a time where you were just finding your footing, creating and exploring your imagination. Do you remember the first thing that you ever drew?
Yeah, so when I was 5 years old, I was a very weird looking kid with you know, very big eyes. The kids would call me frog eyes and stuff like that. I promise this is leading to that. I'm not just gonna dig deep on my childhood, but essentially, there was one kid in my class named Sam, and he would draw Ghostbusters, and he had like all these friends, and I was like, dude, I guess that's the key right there. I got to be really good at drawing Ghostbusters, and that's how I will unlock friendship in my life.
I see.
Yeah. So I started drawing simply for petty reasons, and you know, it turned out to be like the funnest thing in the world, and we were the two draw boys in the class, and yeah, I think I don't know what he's up to, because you know, he was like an elementary school friend, but I just kind of kept at it and just kept powering through.
Dude, was he like your rival during that time? Guess pushed each other.
Yeah, yeah. He was. I was the Sasuke to his Naruto, for sure.
Oh shit.
Yeah, my brother killed my family. Is a whole thing.
Nice.
Oh, damn.
But in this timeline, the Sasuke is the one that's going to be Hokage.
Yeah, hopefully. Hopefully this iteration of Sasuke doesn't abandon his family and, you know, teach little boys how to use chakra in the woods.
I think a lot of people have the similar origin story where they were the kid who drew in their class. Maybe there's one or two, but and there's nothing wrong for drawing to like impress people. I did the same thing like when Pokemon was big and everyone wanted to see Pokemon, and I just happened to be able to draw Pokemon, and that was the value I created for people. And that's how it got all started.
Yeah. Oh, especially around that time. I I mean, I'm assuming we're all around, like early to mid 20s,
Hmm.
like the Pokemania thing going forward was a huge deal, and my room would just be littered with drawings of, Charmanders and Pikachus and
Same.
Sick.
I had a poster of all 151 at the time, and I was like, I'm going to draw all of these.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, man.
um,
I would just like draw Pokemon at the school library with their how to draw Pokemon books. It was cool.
that's my jam. Do you remember what type of subjects did you draw as a kid other than Ghostbusters?
I think typically it was whatever I was consuming in terms of like media.
Hmm.
So Pokemon, stuff like that. I would also come up with my own characters and stuff like that. I would base them around maybe like pets that I had or
Hmm.
something like that. I remember my grandma had this cat that was awful and would attack people. So I made him like a villain in the story or something.
Yes.
Uh,
Would you say that was your first OC?
yeah, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I think it does kind of fit the whole OC thing because it probably was like a furry character,
Hmm.
like the only time I've ever really drawn a furry character.
Oh
Um,
shit. John's dark past.
yeah,
He come
my
out.
dark 6-year-old past,
You
I'm
came
I'm
out.
too afraid to post that OC because I think that people might steal it, so I don't want to risk it.
Oh man, post it on DeviantArt. It's okay.
Of course.
Yeah, next viral hit.
I'm sure you get this a lot, but I can see your illustrations integrating perfectly into a children's book. Were there any children's books you remember as a kid that might have influenced your drawing style or your aesthetics and choices in subject matter?
I think subconsciously Maurice Sendak, who did Where the Wild Things Are, has
Ah,
always kind of been in the back of my brain. Um, I didn't really realize until I got to school and had more of an academic study on like narrative storytelling through illustration, like how effective his illustrations were.
hmm.
Like the choices that he made were incredibly revolutionary for his time.
Oh yeah, iconic.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And doing really cool stuff like having wordless spreads, like and just all this crazy stuff that he did. Even in terms of like portraying the mom as not like an angelic an angelic like deified woman,
Hmm.
giving her more of an actual personality like an actual mom probably would, in a very subtle way. Stuff like that I think has always kind of been in the back of my brain.
Hmm. Yeah, I can definitely see like when I'm looking at your art right now, I see a lot of I don't know, just like depth and extra layers onto you added to your characters,
Thanks, man.
both literally and in their personality and the character or what we're supposed
Also,
to
in terms
imagine.
of technique, I loved his watercolor and ink work. I think that
Hmm.
that's something I really tried to kind of extract from him. I mean, he was people usually associate him with Where the Wild Things Are, but he's actually a very versatile creator in terms of like how he can use a brush pen and he can render
Mm-hmm.
fairly realistically. So kind of taking those techniques and trying to apply them to my own work and my own voice is something that I've always found really fun to do.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, I can see a direct correlation from his work to yours as I'm looking at it. You mentioned watercolor. That's a really big thing. When did that technique come into play?
Honestly, watercolor has only been like about 2 or 3 years as a tool. Um, Prior to
Hmm.
that, I came from much more of a drawing background. I guess hence my name. Uh, and
Nice.
yeah, so I was terrified of color because of this, and I tried to use digital, and I was intimidated by how many choices there was. Because with digital, you could use any crazy color. You could use like
Hmm.
cyan and pink together, and you know create stuff that's ultimately not harmonious ever. So
Awesome.
watercolor felt like it suited, especially more of my drawing style, which is, kind of a little bit creepy. And because I come from more of a drawing background, I felt like the way you can apply watercolor to drawings doesn't necessarily clash with the drawings too much.
Yeah, I can see that. You can kind of pull color across an ink drawing, and I don't know. I kind of like it a little better because I don't like stuff that's like over blended, and the color is just very powerful and is able to speak on
And I
its own.
also kind of, I hope it doesn't sound pretentious, but I usually equate watercolor painting to kind of like dancing, in the sense that there's
Hmm.
like a bit of a lack of control. Um,
Hmm.
uh, I mean, when you're dancing with a partner, because watercolors tend to mix in interesting ways that you can't necessarily have full control over.
Yeah,
Yeah, you kind of it's controlled chaos. Oh, what were we
like,
gonna say,
do you
Yoder?
take your time with each color? Like, do you let one dry out before you start the next? Because I assume it would be hard, of course. So,
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it depends on what effect I'm trying to go for. But usually I do kind of have to pre-plan things. So, and I have a hair dryer right next to my desk that I just pull out, and that's why
nice.
usually during like voice chats and stuff, I'm always like muting or hanging up because I don't want to expose everyone to, and just ruin everyone's day.
Ah, I see now. Okay, the pieces
Dude,
are
I
coming
just thought you didn't
together.
want talking. They got tired of us.
No, no, that's my disappearing act is purely so I don't blow out people's eardrums.
Set in the mute, and
Yeah.
then and so
I
that's what's
think one
going on.
time I
I see.
accidentally forgot to mute. I think it was poor Alex that I just, he was like, "Whoa." I was like, "Oh no. Oh no." And it was somebody who I had just met, and I was like, "Oh no, these guys are going to think that I'm like the biggest tool."
So, like, do you have any other like inspirations? Well, like, I guess, yeah. All right, go on.
Yeah, inspirations. I mean, if you look at my artwork, I'm sure that it's not hard to tell that I'm a huge weeaboo. Anime is just always been lurking in the background, like a friend who's a bad influence.
Why would that friend be a bad influence? Not that bad. I like your.
Oh, I'm mainly joking, but
Oh
yeah,
shoot! I really like your like anime-ish looking style with the hatching and the watercolor. Oh, welcome back.
thanks, man.
Yeah, I feel like it fits very perfectly. Also, like in style you draw it, it would these like human like characters would fit a children's book pretty well.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I think that like when I first started drawing anime and stuff like that, I kind of feel like I did what pretty much everybody else does, is where we're all just trying to draw One Piece and Naruto and
Yeah,
just
man.
draw stuff in that style.
Yeah, man.
Yes.
Shout outs to friend of the show Judo for
Yeah,
drawing
man.
drawing One
Uh,
Piece.
Yeah.
you,
Oh, is he the creator of One Piece?
yeah, man. Or we're
Yeah,
friends.
yeah,
We're friends with like a very famous mangaka.
Oh man.
yeah. He goes by the name Oda
Yeah.
sometimes.
This whole time my idol was right under my nose. I gotta DM him and make incredibly uncomfortable comments about how he changed my life and all that stuff.
God, do it, man. I'm sure he would appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of One Piece, I hope I don't go off on a tangent, but I think that's that manga is probably one of the reasons why I wanted to do this professionally.
Hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I originally wanted to go into comics, um, mainly because of one scene in One Piece. Are you guys familiar with the Arlong Park arc in One Piece?
Vaguely, but you can
Yeah.
still describe it to
Yeah.
us.
Well, I don't want to spoil anything, but essentially there's this part where this one character who's been fairly tight-lipped about their past is just like having a huge breakdown because of events that occur, and it's just being incredibly like brutal towards themselves. And one of the characters steps up and is like, "Look, dude, like we're gonna handle everything. You just relax. Like we're here for you." And and then all the characters just walk towards the gate to fight the bad guys, and there's just this really cool spread of everybody looking like really pissed off and really cool. And I was like, like tears streaming down like my little boy face. I was like, oh my god, I
Yes.
love One Piece.
Yeah.
The One Piece signature beautiful
Yeah,
cry.
with the snot coming
Yeah,
down.
the ugly crying
Yeah.
is so good.
Oh my
Oda
god.
is so good at like just uh, taking these wacky characters and still having them somehow like be emotionally effective in moments.
I found it interesting that
Definitely.
you originally were interested in comics. What? How did you like decide like from there like, oh, I'm gonna do children's books? Or you can tell us a bit about uh your your comic past too.
Yeah, so with comics, I wanted to go into them mainly because I consumed a lot of manga, and I consumed a little bit of Western comics, stuff like Watchmen, Scott Pilgrim, stuff that I'm sure a comic fan listening would be like, dude, what a normie. Um, but I ultimately I loved coming up with stories ever since I was a kid, like kind of like what I mentioned with my grandma's insane cat. Just
Mm-hmm.
conjuring up weird narratives, and I thought that comics would be a good place to do it because my art has always been a little bit creepy and a little bit more intense. So I figured
Mm-hmm.
that utilizing comics in that way, like it'd be fairly like age appropriate for the type of stuff that I was drawing. And I didn't even necessarily consider children's books. Actually, about halfway through this college experience that I'm currently in right now, I realized like, hey man, I haven't drawn a single comic. Like, all I've been doing is coming up with weird characters, doing narrative illustrations, just filling out my sketchbook like crazy.
I'm stuck in that right
Yeah,
now.
yeah, it's kind of tricky because like it's an easy trap to fall into because I notice a lot of people tend to like, and I'm totally guilty of this too. A lot of people tend to like think about their comic like and just not ever actually, like make it. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I sort of was thinking like I keep telling people I want to go into comics, but I notice that the people who are spending like hours and hours on their craft, like I feel like I'm kind of like uh not necessarily insulting what they do, but I'm not putting as much into it as they are. And so I kind of at that point was like, oh, like if I don't want to do comics, like I know I want to draw, but what exactly do I want to do? Luckily, the next semester I had this
Hmm.
insanely talented teacher. She's this incredible children's book illustrator, and she watercolor paints, and I just fell in love with what she does, and
Hmm.
I wanted to not necessarily emulate that, but see where I could take my voice and apply it to, narrative illustrations. And children's books
Mm-hmm.
started out as an experiment to do that, but then I totally fell in love with how nuanced that storytelling medium can turn out to be, and like all of the stuff that people are doing in it that I had not even been aware of. Like it's a very versatile industry, and there's a lot of really cool people coming up with really cool things. And
That's
what was the
awesome.
question? Sorry, I kind of got off on a tangent.
I think oh, I would say I think yeah you've answered it.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue into I guess this would be backing up a bit, but I was gonna ask, when did you mentioned the type of stuff you draw. Like, when did the fantastical, whimsical creatures and scenarios come into play? Did you
I
always draw
think
like
so.
that?
I think that my artwork has always been a little bit creepy and whimsical, mainly because,
Hmm.
again, I'm really trying hard here not to sound pretentious, but I always felt like it was fun to draw nice characters that look evil and evil characters that are actually nice. Uh,
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
ever since I was a kid, I was always aware that people kind of exist in gray areas. uh, I remember being
Hmm.
really frustrated as a kid that there would just be like, you would look at a character in a cartoon and be like, all right, well, that's the evil guy. You can tell by his design, and he clearly
Hmm.
just wants to destroy the main character. Now I actually kind of find those characters endearing. It's like if a character is just like evil just for like no reason, like I think it's kind of entertaining.
Yeah.
But as a kid, I remember like kind of being drawn towards characters that are a little bit more morally gray. Like even though they look a little weird or a little uncomfortable or off, they actually turn out to be kind of a nice person. Or maybe this person looks really nice, but actually they're fairly antagonistic and maybe cruel. So stuff like that, I think, has always kind of leaked its way into some of the weirder characters that I make.
That's interesting. Yeah, yeah, I really like that. It's fun to hear that because as an animator, I'm kind of told to make my character designs just kind of accentuate like one point, and even with the shape language, I'm supposed to like make this look like a villainous villain or whatever. But I love morally gray shit, so I'm always at ends with my own character designs when I'm
Yeah, I
trying to
mean,
make them.
I have I have huge respect for animators because how they utilize shape design and making things move in a fluid way, it's something that I personally have trouble wrapping my head around. I think it's so cool that you guys do what you do.
It's it's the life I've chosen. It's a very nervous laugh.
I didn't choose the animation life. The animation life chose me, Brent.
Thinking about that, I want to ask, when did you start drawing the crazy looking old men?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah.
I think that, oh, man, I don't know how to answer this without sounding like a complete weirdo, but I feel like I've already kind of made myself into that in the past 20 minutes, so here it goes. But I think that like one of the funnest things to draw for the past few years has been old men.
Nice.
I was gonna say, is it because of like details on them since they're like all wrinkly and stuff?
Yeah, no, dude, you totally read my mind. Like, it's such a
Yeah.
fun way to practice ink work. The pen is like my favorite tool to use, and the thing about drawing like baby faces or female faces is that the more
Mm.
lines you put on, I mean, you guys know this because you guys are
Oh
draw
yeah.
boys, but the more lines you put on, you age the character significantly. And while I was learning ink, I would just over render everything. So I was like, man, everybody's turning into an old man. So I just kind of embraced that.
I can vouch for that. I haven't drawn a lot of old men, but when I have, they've been the saggiest, oldest men ever, and it's so much fun to draw them.
It's incredibly it's again, this is going to sound so weird, but it's really meditative in a way to
Yeah.
just, I mean, cross hatching in general, there's something very, I know I usually, when I discuss ink work with people, they usually go like, I don't know how people have the patience for ink work, just line after line after line. And in my brain, I mean, of course, sometimes you obviously feel that, but
Mhm.
I also feel a sense of like it's very calming and relaxing to just,
Yeah, that's the good shit.
yeah, for sure, man. I remember I
Uh,
told someone once, like, yeah, I love drawing like bald old men. And they looked at me like, dude,
Out of
I don't,
context.
yeah, like, I don't want you to explain any further.
The what you said about the inking being meditative, I relate to that too. It's I don't know if you've seen the manga documentary Manben, about how
Oh,
manga is
dude.
made. Someone, I don't remember who talked about it, but he was talking about backgrounds, and he was talking about how he can't wait to get to the backgrounds because that's the part where he can just kind of zone out and just pluck away at things and sculpt them here and there because it's most of is already set up, and once he's got the structure down, that's his meditation time. It's just rendering and putting the shading on a background.
Was that Inio Asano?
It might have been. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, I love Manben. Naoki Urasawa. He's
oh,
actually one of
dude,
the reasons why I wanted to get into comics in the first place.
dude, yeah, he's so inspiring. That whole documentary just makes me want to do so much with my career.
Yeah, I mean, to
Wow.
anybody who's listening, like Manben, if you're feeling like I don't know if I want to draw today, like watch an episode of Manben, and if you're not pumped after that, you're lying to yourself, my dude.
And I feel like everybody I know has already watched this, and they keep talking about how great it is. I haven't watched it
Oh,
yet. Guess
dude.
I'm gonna have to start soon.
Oh, dude, Yoder, you gotta go for it. I don't know if even if you're not familiar with Naoki Urasawa as a creator, which
Mhm.
by the way, people should really check him out. Um, Even if you're not familiar with that, you might find a creator that you're interested in. Like he interviews a lot of really excellent creators like Junji Ito, Inio
Yeah.
Asano.
Oh damn!
Yeah, he.
You already mentioned Junji Ito, man. Okay, bye.
Yeah, yeah.
Yo just leaves. Yeah, yeah. So we've discussed how you transitioning from comic books into children's books. What do you still ever like get that itch though to do comics someday?
For sure. It definitely even shows up in my children's books because
Hmm.
there's a lot of moments where you can plan things out sequentially in a way that kind of pulls from graphic novels and the comics. And I could definitely see myself at some point wanting to utilize my characters maybe for something for a graphic novel, or maybe a children's book that utilizes more of those features.
Hmm. Yeah, you've
But
got a lot of built-in characters here. You could even do like a one shot or something.
thanks, man. Yeah, but ultimately, like I said earlier, I don't want to like disrespect the craft of comic artists,
Yeah.
because those dudes, they put in such an incredible amount of work.
Oh
uh,
yeah.
I mean, again, I'm sure you guys know, like, I was looking at a mangaka's like schedule as to what he has to endure. I
Oh,
think
it's
like
sad.
Anime News Network had an article about it or something, and it's like, dear Lord.
Especially if they're like weekly, they have a weekly shonen or something.
Yeah, those guys are monsters. I know that the creator of Naruto, he had a panel like right when Naruto ended in America, in New York, and people were like, "What are you gonna do after Naruto? Like, what's the next
Oh my
big thing?"
god.
And he's like, "Well, I got married like 5, 10 years ago, and I'm gonna go on my honeymoon."
Oh my god.
Oh
Yeah, and
shit!
So
everybody was like,
sad.
"Oh." Everyone
Guess
was
I
like, "All
should have
right."
asked that.
Yeah, I'm sure the person who asked that was
Yeah,
like, "Wow, I feel pretty bad."
Ugh, I'm a prick.
yeah. It's nothing. It's nothing but drawing manga for them.
Yeah,
Those are just-
you have to really live and breathe it.
You gotta lose. They have to like lose like sleep time, right?
Oh
Oh
my
yeah.
God, definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, even with like the children's book stuff that I do, like I lose plenty of sleep. Like I can't imagine how much those guys lose.
It's a very inhumane schedule.
Yeah, yeah. I'm wondering what the future of that is. That and the anime industry in general. I know that a lot of those guys that create beautiful work are just treated incredibly unfairly, and I hope that there's some sort of I don't know what the answer is, but I hope that there's some sort of system that can come out where a lot of those guys, you know, get maybe fairer wages, or because it's a global industry.
I'd be okay with it slowing down a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, and I agree with that, man. Like, if it meant having a little bit less anime in order to make sure that those guys get the rest that they need and all that stuff, I'm totally down. As much of a weeboo, basement dweller as I am,
Same.
it'd be cool to have those guys, get a full night of sleep.
I'd like to transition here back to you, and we mentioned earlier about you being an art student, and I just wanted you to maybe tell us about your experience as an art student. What if I don't know if you can share with us like what's your major or whatever, but were there any mediums or techniques you hadn't tried that you added to your tool belt there? Was there anything you had difficulty with?
Yeah, so I am an illustration major in San Francisco right now.
Okay.
Um, I art school it's been mostly a positive experience, especially within the last few years, because once you kind of hit the advanced classes, things kind of click together. Teachers are a lot more invested in you, and you get to really focus on finding your own voice. But ultimately, at the start, I went into art school and I kind of went in with the mindset that everybody else did, which is like, let's see, a lot of people go into art school and they're not really aware of stuff like anatomy and color theory and how lighting comes into play.
Yeah,
Like they
myself
don't.
included.
Yeah, and that's understandable because this stuff just kind of looks like magic when you're a kid.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
it's hard to consider that there's like actual academic study that goes into it. Um, and my school also has open enrollment, so which leads to an incredibly high dropout rate.
Mhm.
Uh, so in the beginning, like everybody is like super overwhelmed and stressed out because they're like, wait a minute, like we have to spend like 2 hours rendering this sphere and this cylinder in charcoal. Like why can't I draw my animes, bro? So yeah,
What
so
does
it
open enrollment mean?
oh, so like you don't need a portfolio to get in. Um,
Oh, okay.
oh,
yeah,
Interesting.
yeah, which is, I don't know. It's something that I've kind of gone back and forth on as either a positive or negative thing, because
Hmm.
the negative side to that I've noticed is that pretty much anyone who's like, yeah, I used to draw a little bit, like I could come in
Mm,
and uh, and then they come in and they like party and stuff like that, and they're not like devoted to the craft and all that stuff. Like
yeah.
that can be kind of, for me personally, I get a little bit I get more motivated when I have people who like really care about what they're doing
Same.
surrounding me. But the other positive that I've noticed is that people who have started out and their foundation skills and their drawing skills aren't necessarily like technically efficient. I don't think that they would have initially gotten into an art school, and then by the end of like their degree or something like that, they're pulling out these incredibly beautiful drawings, and they really put in the work. And
Hmm.
something like that, the fact that they didn't have that barrier in the beginning, and the fact that they were accepted right away, I think could lead to really cool stuff. But anyways,
Oh.
that was a bit of a tangent. Sorry.
Oh, that's fine. That's interesting stuff. It's a bigger opportunity for more people.
Yeah, I used to be super down on the fact that like it's not portfolio based. But I think it's a mixed bag. Once you get kind of into the upper level classes and everybody kind of gets to know each other, because all the people who are kind of serious trying or feel like that it's what they want to do. Um,
Yeah.
uh,
That's the best part for me
yeah,
at least.
and I hope I also don't sound elitist, because essentially, like there are people who sign up for art school and they think it's what they want to do, and then they find out like, oh no, this is actually kind of more like a hobby that I want to pursue, and I
Hmm.
think that that's completely valid. Um, but yeah, it was kind of cool to find the people who kind of wanted to stick with it more as a career.
Oh yeah. It's obvious that I naturally gravitate towards the ones who kind of want to stay in it, and I'm big on community and being around uh, people, inspiring people like that.
Yeah, and there's also plenty of people who I'm friends with on like Instagram and stuff like that who value it as a hobby or something that they do like on the side after their day job. Like
Oh
maybe
yeah.
maybe they have like a few kids and they can't put the time into, but they're still like excited about the craft, and that I find that to be equally as motivating for sure.
Oh yeah. I have some buddies, some tattoo artists and stuff like that. They still stick with it, and it makes me happy to see that.
Nice, nice.
But I wanted to I guess back up here. To the one question I asked earlier, were there any mediums or techniques you hadn't tried that were completely new to you that kind of surprised you that you liked it, or was there anything you had difficulty with?
Yeah, so for art school, I'm not really sure I can speak to other art schools, but at my school at least they kind of had you try every medium under the sun.
Yeah.
So yeah, and which was a little bit frustrating at first because I didn't try watercolor until later on. So I kind of had to deal with oil paints and gouache and stuff that really kind of made me doubt my own potential in terms of ever utilizing color in my own work. Because
Hmm.
it's not that I couldn't adapt to those mediums if I tried, but I just noticed I wasn't having fun using them like I saw other people were using or other
Yeah.
people were doing. A lot of my peers can really make beautiful oil paintings and really cool stuff with like really opaque gouache shape design and stuff like that. And I'm just like I was just a dude with weird eyebrows, kind of sitting in the back, like in a sketchbook, like, oh man, what is color?
I'm the same. I can't I've only oil painted like once. I've never even used gouache. I'm kind of garbage as traditional. I'm kind of an all digital boy. So when I was kind of forced to do that, I kind of realized how lacking I was in that department.
It's really gratifying to like put pen to paper. That's
Hmm.
something I really discovered. I've been totally I'm kind of the converse of that, where like I'm totally slacking on my digital stuff, and I need to kind of put more effort into that because I'm so addicted, man, to the rush of like putting brush to paper. And
So good.
yeah, it's so good. Yeah, something about a tablet. I absolutely respect what people do with digital work, but I don't know. I feel disconnected whenever I draw with a
Yeah.
tablet or a Cintiq, and I really, dear Lord, this must sound pretentious, but I really love to feel the paper under my pen, man.
Oh yeah, no. I definitely feel that. I should say that I'm not full digital. I do draw in my sketchbook every day, but I do feel that disconnect, especially when I try to use my digital brushes. It doesn't have the same grip and pull of the tooth of the paper, and so lately I've been trying to solve this by drawing in my sketchbook, scanning it in, and literally just digitally painting over top of the scanned image and leaving like the texture of the paper in, trying to like fuse the two worlds together so I can have my cake and eat it too.
Dude, there's a really awesome children's book artist called Emily Hughes. She does one of my favorite picture books, Wild, and she utilizes a technique. I mean, it's very different from what you do, but she'll combine like graphite pencil drawings and color them digitally. I think Rovina Kai, Cai. She's an illustrator who also does a very similar technique, and people can do such beautiful stuff with the techniques that you've described.
Oh yeah, I'm checking it out right now. There's some really bright and colorful stuff going on here. Yeah, I gotta get back into it. I've been just inking digitally, but I kind of miss going back to that stuff. Maybe I'll try some watercolor too because this looks really nice.
Yeah, watercolor. I recommend to everyone to try watercolor and ink at least a little bit, especially ink drawing, because ink you kind of have to work with your mistakes, and
Hmm.
ink really taught me to plan ahead, like what I'm
Oh
gonna
yeah.
do. Because I don't know. I'm sure not. I'm sure people don't run into this as much as I have, but I just speed right towards the sketchbook, and I'm like line, 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 and sometimes you need
Same.
to slow down and like make deliberate choices. Like, okay, so I want maybe like a thicker line here. I want to this is receding back into the space, so thinner, stuff like that.
Yeah. I I have I've done some ink washes before, and though that was kind of me finding out just how much something as permanent as that forces you to plan ahead.
Yeah, yeah, it's terrifying, but it's exciting.
Friend of the show, Judo, he's done some some traditionally Chinese ink stuff. So he was telling me about that and how it's it's about making like a confident line, or putting an emotion behind a line, like being like, oh, this is an aggressive line, or this is like a whimsical line. And I kind of like that.
Yeah, a lot of those is this like an ink drawing with like a brush?
Yeah, I think it's like a traditional brush. You just
Yeah, there's nothing cooler than seeing a dude or a dudette come up with like a really confident line.
Yes, yeah. I was keeping in art school. Did you do any group critiques there? And do you enjoy, if you did, do you enjoy that sort of interaction with your work?
Oh yeah, so with group critiques, like that's something right out the gate that we have to do. Which is why I think that there's probably like a 70% dropout rate at our school. Um, Usually, group critiques right out the gate are fairly not brutal, but they're honest. Teachers aren't afraid to be like, yeah, that's definitely not working. You need to put more effort into rendering this, and I totally value it, honestly. Like,
Yeah,
I
same.
mean, obviously, nobody wants to be told like, like this thing that you put 10 hours into, like it's not working. But
Yeah.
growing up in the background that I did, I was the only one who really drew in high school and within my family, and so to the people around me, merely the fact that I was drawing at all, like they felt like they couldn't really criticize it in any way because it's not an interest that they had. So when I got to school and someone was like, "Yeah, these lines aren't working," I was like, "Oh my god, thank you."
Finally.
Yeah. Um, but I imagine for people who kind of grew up hearing like, like, no, 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 this is perfect,
Yeah.
and then they, hear like, no, this isn't working. Like the lighting isn't working for what you're trying to achieve.
I think a lot of people start out being a big fish in a small pond, and if you make the choice to go to art school, the group critiques can be very valuable. Also like a test, because you need to be able to kind of take the critique, or else you won't be able to get better. So I see it as like kind of a proving ground, and I love group critiques.
Yeah, man, I think you kind of nailed it when you said big fish in a small pond. I mean, I feel like that's kind of what I was, but not because I was like, dude, I crushed everyone in high school, but it's
Yeah,
merely because I was the only one who really took drawing at all seriously in high school.
same.
Art class in my high school was just kind of an excuse for people to like, like fuck around and stuff. Um, yeah, but once I got to art school and everybody was the drawing kid, not just me.
Mhm.
Then it was the common thing of like, oh man, this can either motivate me or it can like freeze me, or some days it can do that. Uh, you know, it's all those complicated things that that big fish kind of has to go through when they go into the ocean.
Yeah, what you said earlier about you sometimes you'll come in with something that you worked 10 hours on. You can be really crestfallen to kind of hear that, oh, this isn't working at all. But that kind of prepares you for work in the real world, because you could get a client that might say the same thing someday.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I've noticed that especially like within the past few years, my teachers kind of make fun of me a little bit for being a little bit masochistic, where I'm like, come on, man, be brutal. Like really tear into my weaknesses. Because I don't know, I really have tried to make an effort to embrace the idea of, as morbid as it sounds, killing your baby, in order to
Hmm.
further what you do. That being said,
Yeah.
you know, of course you want people to be like, you did a good job, man. So I'm, you know,
I'm the same way. I'm the same type of art student. I'll be like, and they'll be like, "Oh, this isn't working." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's shit. Right, right, right." And they're like, stand up for
yeah.
yourself just a bit."
Yeah, and there's always a few people that are like, no, 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 I did this good, and you're like, and
Uh,
it's wildly uncomfortable.
did you have you had any professors that were exceptionally hard at you on first, but then you maybe just figured out why they were like that? Did you have like a tough sensei?
Oh God, yeah. A lot of my teachers, my school is largely international. Like,
Mhm.
I think in my friend group in real life, like I kind of realized the other day that like me and one other dude are the only Americans in that friend group. Like,
Oh wow.
yeah, I grew up around the area that I went to school. Everybody else is like I'm from the mountains of Yugoslavia, and I'm like, oh man, I'm from across the bridge. Uh, but yeah, essentially, what that leads to is a lot of the teachers are international as well. So I have a teacher from Taiwan and a teacher from China, and the culture there is very different. Where like uh, I mean, obviously, it's not my culture, so I can't speak to it. But from what I've observed and from what's been explained to me is that like it's about like efficiency and really
Mhm.
like I think that American culture, it's a little bit more like, hey man, like because you tried, like you did good.
Yeah,
Whereas
participation award.
yeah, yeah, which I mean, obviously that's I don't mean to minimize
Yeah,
people,
it's
but
important to
yeah,
be encouraging, but yeah, I
yeah,
see where you're coming from.
yeah. But like I have this teacher who like especially earlier on, like you're supposed to kind of learn how to render stuff in a more fine art way, with like kind of really detailed oil paintings and stuff that's a little bit more academic. And I had this teacher,
Mhm.
Henry Yan, who is this incredibly skilled oil painter who he's got a really good reputation in the fine arts industry. Um, and he was really cool about just being brutal, like in the sense of like, no, no, what are you doing, man? Like you got to put more effort into rendering this part of the figure, or I can tell that you've studied portraiture way more than you have anatomy. Like you need to really
Mhm.
match the levels of those two. um
Yeah, and something that I love those kinds of teachers. I know not everyone can handle them, but something that I try to tell people to kind of help them, I guess, cope with it is just like you're paying to be here, and like if they didn't care, they wouldn't say as much as they do. They're here because they're trying to teach you, and they care. They're giving you their time. So like just kind of appreciate what they're saying, that they're getting to the point right away.
yeah, dude, I absolutely agree. Especially that's I guess that would be kind of a downside to art school is uh I mean I didn't necessarily grow up with a ton of money, so student loans are a thing. And
Oh yeah.
I think that kind of having those loans in the back of your brain is sort of motivation in a sense.
Yes, I'm in the thick of it too. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah, and it really kind of has you in the mindset of like, not like take advantage of these opportunities and these resources while you have them. And there's many people who are not lucky enough to be able to pursue art for a career, and pick the brains of these really talented people and have these really talented peers. And it's like it's
Oh
important
yeah.
it's important to try and get what you can out of the situation and, give back and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's a good time to experiment. My school it offers all sorts of things. Like we have a room full of Cintiqs, and that's something I don't have at home. So it's like I basically when the semester's on, I basically live there.
Yeah, did you have the experience I did where like you see a room full of Cintiqs and it feels unreal? Like,
Yeah.
because yeah, I mean, I grew up hearing I hadn't seen a Cintiq before I saw one of those rooms full of Cintiqs, and a Cintiq was always this kind of like weird concept in my brain. Like, whoa, so like, let me get this straight. Like, you could draw on a computer, right? And then you wander into one of those rooms and there's just 1,000 of these really expensive Cintiqs, and you're just like, ah, I'm afraid to breathe. If I breathe, I might,
It
the
might crack
vapor
the
from my
glass.
breath might, yeah.
I went to an open house before I went to my school, and when they let me into that room, me and my buddy got a hold of one, and we were drawing like just anime characters or something. And it was time to go, and like I didn't want to go. I was attached to that thing. I was like, no, please, this is my only chance.
I had a friend who I was sitting next to, and it was our first time using a Cintiq. And I was like, "What are you drawing, man?" And he was like, "I'm drawing Naruto." And I was like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, dude. I just feel like this is a really expensive piece of equipment, and if I don't use it, and the first thing, if I don't make the first thing that I draw Naruto on this incredibly fancy piece of technology, then I'm just gonna kind of be mad at myself." And part of me,
What a
part of
hero.
me, yeah, part of me rejected that, but also immediately understood.
Well, actually, I mentioned work in the quote unquote real world earlier, and I kind of want to transition to talking about freelance work and kind of asking if what are your thoughts on that? Do you have any experience with it? Would you like to do you enjoy it if you already do it? Um, and have you found I guess pricing your stuff difficult at all?
I guess I'll answer the pricing thing first because that is probably the most difficult.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, ultimately, it's hard to discern. Like, it's a little bit easier when stuff like contracts are involved, because
Hmm.
there's sort of standard industry rates for things like regarding stuff like children's books, and um, again, it's very valuable that I have like teachers that are kind of in the trenches, so to speak, to kind of pick their
Yeah.
brains. Like, is this like a reasonable amount of pay, or because when you're in art school, you're not really. At least maybe I should speak for myself, but I wasn't really focused on like the financial side of it. I was just focused on trying to get as good as I could be at the act of drawing. Um,
Yeah.
Uh, but as far as like freelance stuff works, I am currently involved in a project right now, and yeah, I'm finding it to be a lot of fun, and I think that a large part of that is just who you're collaborating with.
Oh
Um,
yeah, definitely.
yeah, yeah. If you get people that like allow you a certain level of creative freedom, and they're also just kind of a decent person to interact with, then I think that goes a long way.
Oh yeah, having a good client. Well, what I mean by a good client is someone who just communicates a lot, preferably. That's the kind of people I like working with the best.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and on Instagram and stuff like that, like I've had the opportunity of people like saying like, "Hey, man, like it'd be cool to like get maybe a few sketches from you," or like people from around people who have found my work through my website and stuff like that. Um, and those are always fun. Those kind of one-off like small jobs to do.
Yeah, I'm hoping to do some stuff like that this summer.
Yeah, yeah, man, for sure, for sure. Like the even picking up a couple of those can be incredibly motivating for sure.
Awesome. We mentioned the word collaborating. It makes me think about well, if you ever tried to publish your own children's book or kind of make your own thing, would you consider maybe working with a writer or something like that?
Yeah, definitely. Um, Uh, Mainly because a lot of the stuff that I've learned has been more about like illustrating and coming up with like telling a story visually. And there's still a lot about story structure and the basic act of writing that I don't necessarily have any sort of academic knowledge surrounding.
Same.
Um, and there's people that have studied that stuff really efficiently that I would definitely want to have contribute to like a children's book in a way where like hopefully my artwork can achieve representing their vision in some way.
No, have you had a chance to I guess collaborate with anyone in other sorts of ways at school and stuff like that or online?
Yeah, there's been a few people like advertising majors and stuff, and
Hmm.
uh people, it's kind of interesting when you collaborate with people who are not illustration majors.
Yeah.
Yeah, just kind of just the like the small misunderstandings that everyone has about what each other does. It's cool to I think that that's good training for what I assume it will be like when I'm out of school. uh,
Mhm.
because people, it kind of shines a light on the fact that, oh yeah, like people kind of walking around in the real world don't study perspective for 10 hours a day.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've had studio jobs. Well, I used to do graphic design. That was my main thing, and I had to collaborate with marketing directors or PR and stuff like that, and they would kind of show up with a project ticket, and they'd be like, "Okay, it's time to do whatever you do," and I'd be like, "Well, here, let me just explain some base things what I do.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll help us work better together."
Yeah, I mean, ultimately I would hope that someone would kind of like look at my work and kind of see a specific like voice that they want
Mhm.
representing their work, and not be like, okay, I want this guy to paint like Norman Rockwell,
Yeah.
which I definitely can't do. There was a student in my class who had a job where like he's primarily a digital guy, but the guy wanted him to paint in gouache, and then he was
Mhm.
like talking to the teacher about it. Like he's like, I don't know what to do, and the teacher's like, what? No, 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 don't buy gouache. Like you do digital stuff.
That's an interesting, weird situation to be in. I'd feel kind of weird if someone asked me to do that since I'm a digital boy.
Yeah, I think that people kind of assume that like if you can draw something fairly well, then you could probably do any style. I've had the experience
Yeah.
where I think someone said to me once like, "Yeah, man, so I want you to draw like Darth Vader, but he's like not Darth Vader." And I was like, "What? What?"
That's so confusing.
I was like, "Oh, like my brain just kind of like did a backflip." I was
Just
like,
like shut off.
yeah, and I'm sure in his brain he had a really crystallized version of what he was trying to like say, but like it'd be like me trying to explain stuff about like accounting or like like dance or something like that. Like there's just not the study put into it.
Yeah, it kind of these types of questions get even more muddied when you're a digital guy because it's digital and you do it on the computer. And so people will ask me to like code their website or something. It's like, you do digital media, right? And I'm like, yeah, but I don't know how to like code that well. That's like you're asking me to speak another language.
Yeah, dude, no, I've totally run into that as well, where you're kind of in the situation where people kind of assume that illustrators can do stuff that graphic designers can do, and
Hmm.
like there's not really a clear separation. I've had a lot of people ask me about fonts and stuff like that, and I know dudes that are like really into like kerning and like
Typography and all
yeah,
of it.
all that stuff, and to me it's like they might as well be speaking Mandarin.
Yep.
um, yeah, so I totally get it.
I have some experience with that as a graphic designer. I wasn't the best with typography, but I'd get questions like that a lot, and I had to kind of like look as I leapt and learn things in that like last minute way, like so much stuff with my job.
Yeah.
There's a joke in graphic design, or I don't know if it's like a big joke, but I with my one friends we would say like clients would just be like, "Oh, we need you to make something that's cool, but not like cool, you know?" And we'd be like, sure, just pay me."
Yeah. 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 We want something that's like cute, cool, but not like so cute, cool. Like we're thinking like the adult demographic, but also the kid demographic and also the
Yeah.
teenage demographic, but also very focused, and it's like, what?
And I just send them back, okay.
Yeah.
um okay, cool. Yeah, I've kind of run through most of my questions here. Reaching the 1 hour mark to wrap it up, I guess I'd like to ask you, where do you hope to go with what you do as an illustrator? Like, what's the one big project? If you don't get to do anything else, what would you like to do?
I mean, ultimately, it's a huge privilege to even like, have the opportunity to be able to do this for a living. Like,
Mhm.
a lot of like my family members and people that have come before me, like they just have not had this opportunity to illustrate for a living, and like what a cool thing that we get to do, right?
Yeah,
So what I
it
would like
really
to,
is incredible.
yeah, it's awesome. It's totally awesome, and the idea that I could, support myself off of my drawings, like that would essentially be the dream. That would be great to get there. As far as like specific projects, um, uh, I have a lot of ideas for like children's books and other weird experiments with illustration, watercolor, and stuff like that. That even if a publisher didn't pick it up, it would be really fun to kind of just do it on my own and see what happens. And uh, yeah.
Well, Yoder, do you have any other questions for our guest? Okay. Sick. All right, man. Well, thank you for coming on Virtua Made today. You've been an excellent guest. We got to pick your brain and get to a lot of different aspects of what I wanted to talk about, and I think I know your work a little better now.
Yeah, man, it's cool to talk to you guys. It's gonna be really weird to listen back to this and try and like not cringe at the fact that I probably said and a lot and stuff like that.
I'll make you sound spectacular post editing.
Oh man, that will be a task, my friend.
Let me ask you one thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you take laxatives before a podcast?
Do I take laxatives before a podcast? Let's see. I feel like there might be some disadvantages to doing that. I mean, I'm not 100% on that, but I feel like that might have some backlash. Like my body might not respond to that ideally. So I sort of,
Right.
yeah.
Don't do it.
You've heard it here. You've heard it here, folks. Don't, even for Virtua Made, don't do it.
So wait, let me get this straight. I shouldn't take laxatives before a podcast.
No.
Okay, all right. I just want to be perfectly clear.
Not that anyone here did that or anything.
No. Of course not. Of course not.
Of course,
But,
we never.
for
Yeah,
the
man.
audience.
Of course, man.
Yeah.
We're the last professional broadcasters. We'd never
I
do such a thing.
definitely didn't leave during the podcast.
I just picture us like sitting around a table and like it's you, it's me, Phil, and Yoder, and then like halfway through the podcast, like where Yoder was sitting, there's like a doll with like a printout of like Yoder's face on it, and then like just 75% of the way through the podcast, it just pans back to him and it's just Yoder again, and he's just there.
Just zoom in like on The Office.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Well, thanks for.
Do you want to plug anything in?
Oh yeah, plug your shit, man.
Oh, yeah, sure. So, I guess JohnDrawing.com it's my portfolio website if people want to take a look at that. Let's see what else. Instagram, I have a lot of fun talking to
yeah.
people on there. I haven't been as active on there lately, but typically what I love to do is like stream on there. There's usually kind of a good group of people that come in and out, and they're really supportive and really
Hmm.
fun to talk to. We kind of talk about
Yeah.
nerdy stuff. So that's at
Yeah.
JohnDrawing on Instagram. Trying to think of
I
what
s-
else.
I suggest you should check those streams out. Pretty neat watching him do his work on his craft.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's cool to see, you know, Yoder pop in there, and you know, uh, there's a few people from the Discord group, and you know, just kind of all around. It's a cool group of people.
Yeah. Go check him out, people. Shower him with likes. Make it rain.
Oh, geez. Yeah, but again, I can't thank you guys enough for having me on. It's been cool to finally do this.
Anytime, man.
No problem, man. Thank you for coming on.
Feel free to reach out to possibly be on any podcast in the future, since we also do 4-mans.
Nice. Yeah, it'd be cool to do what podcast that of course I'm butchering the name of because I don't know how to pronounce it like phonetically. You know, to be a
Just say
giant dork
what?
and talk about anime. Yeah. Yeah, dope, man.
Awesome. Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody. This has been Virtua Made, where we talk about creating anything and everything.
Let's keep it virtual. Let's keep it virtual.